Welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, we have Mr. Corey Walker, is a spring 2022 College Fix Fellow with Reason Magazine. And we're going to chop it up about the Uvalde mass shooting, mass killing, and the police response. Mr. Walker, thank you for being on the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good.
I don't want to presume what you know or believe about the police response in this matter. So if you would, give us your sentiment and I will then opine.
Well, I think that the sentiment is obviously, I think people are definitely morally, righteously outraged because of the horrific killing of 19 young kids. And I also think that a lot of people are very furious because not just because of the killing, but there's a lot of other discussions, namely one around guns, but another one also mostly because of the police response. And so, obviously waiting 77 minutes outside while kids are being slaughtered and you're a police officer and you took oath to protect and serve, it's pretty obvious why a lot of people were so upset.
So you agree with me that the response of the local police department was utterly ridiculous and holistically inappropriate for the situation that was happening. Do you agree with me?
Well, look, I think that it's definitely terrible and horrific, but I also think that we have to keep in mind that, the Supreme Court themselves has said police don't have an obligation to protect you, right? Like that's actually a Supreme Court case. They have obligation to investigate these sorts of incidents, crimes after they happen. So they don't have an obligation to do that. Now, with that said, was it morally correct? No. But I think that we also have to be very clear about what police are supposed to do, what their job actually is. With that said, there's a lot of questions to be had here about was this obviously, what's the point of having police that are so heavily armed and well armed if they're not going to be using it in a time like this, and not this time, then what time?
Mr. Walker, let me correct you on one dynamic. The constitutional ruling you are referring to is in reference to a constitutional mandate. Do police have a constitutional mandate to protect? And the answer is no, because it's not codified in the Constitution. However, that does not mean they do not have a statutory mandate to protect based on the statutes of that state or local jurisdiction. It also does not eliminate, according to the US Supreme Court, what's called the duty of care. That police officers still have a duty of care based on who they are and the public trust allocated to them in the community. So when you say there's no constitutional mandate or obligation, that's actually very separate than the job of policing itself. So let's go back to the moral and ethical argument that's being made by myself and many. Let's be very clear. 77 minutes, way too long, children died, and I believe that the blood of many of these children, if not all of them, are on the hands of that local law enforcement agency. But let's look at two incidents in particular. I want to get your opinion about them. One is a mother who decided to do the unthinkable, Angelique Gomez. She ran and got her own children out of that school. The second is a police officer who tried to do the same thing, and he was arrested, detained, disarmed, and taken off of the campus. The mother was able to breach the security protocol, jump over the fence, because after she was handcuffed, she said, listen, if you uncuff me, I will calm down. They uncuff her, she runs. She saved not only both of her children, but other children too. She had no combat training, dear brother. She had no weapons. She had no tactical gear. She didn't even have tactical training, but she had heart. She had courage. Things that you're supposed to have when you sign up to be the damn police anyway, especially when children are being shot in front of you. So you mean to tell me that dozens of officers, none of them had the courage of this woman that weighed about 110 pounds, who was able to breach their own security protocol and save children? You mean to tell me that these police did not have that kind of heart? Not one of them did? Do you think that's a problem?
Well, Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely an issue. Again, like I'm not having a discussion about the morality of the actions. I think it's clear as day that you should definitely, if you're a police officer, put yourself in harm's way to rescue children being slaughtered. And so it definitely, my hat goes off to that mom. Any mother, any parent would do the same in that situation. I also think that it made no sense that the police were outside tackling parents while there was literally a slaughter going on, and they were literally camped out in a hallway. Many, they were already in the school. They just decided to not engage with the shooter, which I think is definitely morally reprehensible. So I think we're definitely on the same page here. I don't think there really can be a debate here. I think there's a lot of debate about who's most liable, for what reason, and also you have to bring into account, should police be held liable in situations like this, and qualified immunity. I mean, that's another discussion. But at the same time, I can't defend any police officer, any adult with a weapon for standing around while kids are being killed. I don't think that there's really much of a defense to be had there. There's legal questions, but the morality of this is pretty clear.
So let's talk about one of the other incidents that came out through the investigation, and even the commissioner of Texas, the Texas police commissioner, came out and was very critical of this. They were waiting on a key. As you just said, Mr. Walker, they were inside of the building. They say the reason they did not move ahead is because they were waiting on a key. Well, come to find out, the door wasn't even locked. There was no key required. Here's the other thing, because I started to look at this excuse from the Uvalde police. I said, a few things don't add up here, Mr. Walker. Number one, if the door did not require a key, that means either A, nobody checked to see if the door was locked or unlocked, or B, they knew it was unlocked and they lied and said, we're just gonna wait on the key as a cover to not go into that building any further. And here's the other part, Mr. Walker. When have you ever known the police to wait for a key to lock up somebody or to apprehend a suspect? None of this makes sense. I literally believe that there's a cultural issue inside of that department. You have to remember, the person that ended up putting bullets in the killer wasn't even part of their tactical command, disobeyed the command of the authority at the time. The other mother, the mother, was able to disobey command of the scene. She's a mother, she doesn't work for them, and she was able to save children. So everybody that actually fixed the situation, for lack of a better word, they were outside of the command of this particular police chief. So why do you think this culture, why do you think this one agency responded in a way that's actually antithetical to human response? Why do you think not one of those cops responded like a parent or responded like a human being when children were being killed in front of them? Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously every police department has their own culture, but I think that part of it may be the type of people that are quite often drawn to police. It's not like, I mean, let's be real. We do talk about police as if, they are our country's best and brightest. But the reality is that a lot of times it's, whoever, I mean, it's, I hate to say left behind, but in a lot of cases it's people, didn't go to college, were not necessarily the best students in high school, or not necessarily the most involved. So therefore it's, it doesn't particularly surprise me that, you are, getting a group of people who are not necessarily the most moral, or necessarily making the most morally righteous or morally correct decisions. I think that police culture is a culture of which there is really a lack of accountability in many cases, in many police departments across the country. And so because of that, it's not surprising to me that they thought they could do this, get away with it. And there probably is quite a bit of lying. We know for a fact there's been lying in this case. And so because of that, like it doesn't surprise me. This probably isn't the first time that they've been doing this. It's probably been going on for quite a while. And this is the fact that this is a massive, massive national story, which children were killed, they can't really sweep it under the rug like they're used to.
You know, I agree with most of what you said. I don't correlate education to courage. You don't have to be educated to be courageous. I do want to talk about the liability factor here, because there's another debate about how liable should the cops be. Should they be legally liable? Should they have some kind of actual statutory penalty? And by the reading of the state law, there's really not a statutory penalty. It should be, I believe wholeheartedly it should be. But let me talk about simple liability. The cops who were involved, they're still getting a paycheck. They're still getting paid.
Right.
Now you got to think about this in the context, Mr. Walker, of government workers. Police officers work for the government. They work for the citizens of that community that pay their salary. It's derived from the taxpayer base, just like any other department. What other department known to man inside of a local government could engage in an action that caused the death of children, where they were inactive when they should have been actionable, and it caused the death of children? They lied about what happened, so there's the deceit aspect. They filed false reports about what happened on the record, but they're still able to get paid. This would not happen, Mr. Walker, under watershed management or communications department in a local municipality. There is no such department that exists, fire department or otherwise, where this kind of negligence, this kind of insanity, this kind of non-human response, this would not happen on any other department without actual penalty, except for the police. Now that's a cultural issue, and it's a cultural issue that permeates beyond just the local police department. Would you not agree?
And that police are probably the one sector versus power literally kill someone, and quite literally, in many cases, the vast majority of cases, there is no accountability mechanism. It's very, very rare when police are held accountable for killing, or not even just necessarily killing, just basic brutality or neglect, right? So I can't think of like any other instance or any other, maybe the military in some cases when they're overseas and committing certain, crimes and stuff over there. But I mean, if we're being honest here, I do think that you're particularly spot on. It's really difficult for me to disagree with you, because I do think that in many cases, in my case, more like libertarian right perspective, the way we have a police culture in this country can be pretty it can be pretty worrying, in the sense that police are held up as heroes, but in many cases they don't do heroic things, and there's a lot of excuses made for them that we don't necessarily make for other government agents. And look, I think that the Uvalde situation is part of a much larger issue in our society, where I'm going to keep harping on it, lack of accountability, and there's no accountability mechanism. The sad thing is that as horrible as Uvalde is, almost no one is going to pay a price for it, and that's really tragic.
That's right, brother. You said something that you can take to the bank. The police officers who lacked the fortitude, should I say, to do the right thing, to engage properly, those officers will not have a real penalty. It simply will not happen. Now, let's go back to a factor about policing in America, okay? Because I think we've gotten it wrong as it relates to public safety. At some point in the narrative, Mr. Walker, we started to believe as a nation that police officers were your public safety measure. That in order to get to a place of public safety, you must simply have more police. But the truth is, policing is one aspect of public safety. It's not the end all to public safety. What do you think it will take to transform that narrative? Because when a city says they've hired more cops and everybody applauds that, well, that's not really a good thing to brag about, because what your city is saying is that we have more crime. We don't know how to fix it. We don't know how to create programs in order to deter it. So we're just going to hire more police, and let's all give them a round of applause.
Well, I think that any sort of criminal justice policing is necessary in any society. You're going to always need the police. But I also think that we have to understand that police in and of itself isn't going to just be enough. You need criminal justice reform. You need to rebuild communities, and that includes keeping parents, especially fathers, home. So we need to think about how we can be preventative and not necessarily, but also keeping fathers in the home, keeping people employed with good jobs. All of these things are part of keeping a society and a community safe. And I think that is really at the heart of, sometimes, the police advocate. I think it's the worst, probably the worst slogan you can think of. I think people care about safety, especially in a time where crime is spiking. I also think that we have to be more proactive in finding preventative solutions, and that is the whole.
All right, Ms. Walker, you're going in and out, but let me ask you, because I missed it. What slogan did you reference just now?
To fund the police. Like, I'm not a fund the police advocate.
Okay, got you. All right, so I do disagree with you on that. I'm actually for the slogan defund the police, and here's why. Defund the police got everybody's attention. Defund the police is actually okay, because what we're saying is stop spending so much money on policing for public safety and actually allocate public safety for public safety. Public safety dollars should go to public safety dynamics that give you public safety results. That's how this should work. So if you need to take money out of that overinflated police budget and actually allocate it to dynamics that enhance public safety in your community, that's a very good thing. And let's be very clear, anytime a cop violates the right of a citizen and that city has to pay millions of dollars to that citizen or the citizen's family, that is in fact defunding the police. And it seems as if those on the right have no problem when the police are defunded in that way, but they only have a problem when black people say the term, or those who are allies of the black community defund the police. Mr. Walker, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.